Hi everyone, welcome back to Healthy with Nicole. I'm Nicole Carter, and I healed myself from ulcerative colitis 7 years ago and continue to be ulcerative colitis free today. So I make these videos to help people that have these digestive problems because I know that there's so much confusing information out there, and a lot of what we find for ourselves is really kind of a discovery process to figure out what works. And so recently I've had people asking why I quit the carnivore diet, even though that was 5 years ago. And so I just thought it might be helpful if I give a little bit of a recap of my dietary journey over, I don't know, the last maybe 10 years or so, because it's very relevant to health and all the things that have been coming up for me. So back in 2012, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis after colonoscopy. I had blood in the stool and pain in the stomach and all of that. Went in and had the colonoscopy, and that's what I was told. So at that point, my doctor told me that nothing that I ate would make a difference, did not matter what I ate, that I couldn't heal that disease. Well, of course, I proved that wrong, but I want to give a little more context to the story. So before that 2012 diagnosis, I had been plant-based. I was vegan, raw vegan, and different variations of a plant-based diet for about 15 years. And one thing I can look back on and say for certain was that I was really fixated on eating mostly vegetables and really avoiding sugar, which is going to come into play and when I'm telling you what I'm doing now. But and so I think that partially contributed to my illness. I think there's a number of things: stress, lots of raw vegetables, and I was drinking almond milk because I was vegan, and the almond milk I was drinking had carrageenan in it, which is known to cause ulcerative colitis. In fact, they use it to induce that in rats for the study of ulcerative colitis. So, of course, that was, a learning curve for me. But so I did shift over. Now, after I was diagnosed, I spent the next 7 years trying different kinds of diets. I mean, really, you name it, I tried it. I tried macrobiotics. I tried all raw. I tried paleo, and really what I settled on was a carnivore diet. And that was after 7 years of experimentation with everything. And in 4 months, it did work. So I talk about this and tell the entire story in my book, How I Healed My Ulcerative Colitis, and in my sequel book, How I Stayed Ulcerative Colitis Free. And those are both on Amazon. I'll put the link down below so you can read in detail the entire story. So I did the carnivore diet for 2.5 years. The first year was great. I had amazing energy. I didn't need to lose weight, but I did gain weight. I gained 5 pounds, but I looked lean. I think I was probably really dehydrated. And I actually really loved it it was quite dramatic change for me. But I enjoyed it. And I did that for, like I said, the first year felt great. The second year, however, was kind of where I began to crash and burn. And I started having problems with my thyroid. A lot of the carnivore people don't like to admit that it messes with your thyroid, but I guarantee your thyroid is going to show some changes if you pay attention, and you can check your labs for it. So it's the T3, that's your activated hormone. Using the T3, the triiodothiamine is the one that is active in your body. That's the T3. T4 is kind of the storage one. And anyway, so that just plummeted. And also, I was experiencing a lot of anxiety and terrible insomnia. I mean, I thought I was going to lose my mind over this insomnia. And I really just began to feel bad, and I started to hold a lot of water, and my periods got really bad, and I just was kind of falling apart. And then after I continued and persevered another 1.5 years, if you can believe that, and it continued to get worse during that time, all those symptoms. My hair started to break and fall out. My skin became really dry and scaly. I mean, classic hypothyroid symptoms. So I decided to dig in a little bit deeper, and I did a urinalysis and some lab work, and I discussed this all in my books too. But what I found was basically what turned me in a new direction, and that was that my cortisol was extremely high. I had really high estrogen, low progesterone, and low testosterone. So basically I was in a very stressed state. And so I started to look into stress and what causes stress on the body. I didn't realize how much stress I was, putting myself through eating that way, because I had no ulcerative colitis. So great, right? Well, not so great, because the state I put myself in has taken a long time to undo. And that is also tied in with hormonal changes like perimenopause, which I write a lot about now. But basically I studied the stress topic and what causes stress to the body. And I found Dr. Ray Peat's work, Hans Selye's work, Rhoda Barnes' work, and wow, it was eye-opening for me. I just realized how much stress I was putting on myself through my diet, and just simply the lack of carbohydrates and the starvation. I used to fast. So I learned a lot in those times. And even though it improved my ulcerative colitis, all those things, I had other things that went wrong, which is why I no longer recommend people to do a strict carnivore diet, maybe very temporarily, and to get you to a point where you can digest more food. But anyway, back to my story. So after 2.5 years of carnivore, I started eating carbohydrates. And my first experience was eating a potato. For the first time, in a year, I probably had actually really good sleep compared to where I was. Now I wouldn't think that would be so good. But so I was like stunned, that wow, this little thing made that much of a difference. And yeah. And that's because, you're hearing in ketogenic and carnivore diet circles that no problem, you don't need to eat carbohydrates because your body will make them. And that's true, it will. But it's going to raise your stress hormones in the process and really create a stressed state for your body. And that's where I found myself. And there's other problems with that too, is for your hormones. When you're in a constant stress state, for women, especially if you're hitting perimenopause at that time, like I was, wow, double whammy, because now you're not able to utilize the progesterone that you are making, and you're making a lot less all of a sudden, because adrenaline blocks those receptors. And when you're running on gluconeogenesis, which is the process of making sugar from your tissues and from your amino acids that are present, your adrenaline is elevated. And so that's what's causing all the insomnia and the anxiety and the constant stress state. And so I really thought something was wrong with me. I was at a loss because I was so deep into the carnivore and keto and low carb belief. So this was eye-opening for me, and I had to experience it firsthand to really see the truth for myself. So from there, that was the end of the carnivore days, in the beginning of following a more balanced diet, incorporating carbohydrates, following the guidance of Dr. Ray Peat, who, really changed my life. And this was a huge, huge improvement for me. Yes, I did gain 10 pounds, and I'm going to talk about what I've discovered recently in another video coming up about why that is, and I've kind of figured that out. So anyway, so I continued on that journey, feeling much better, labs coming in more normal, getting a hold of my hormones, no more anxiety, insomnia pretty much gone. And the only thing that was kind of lingering was that my A1C was high. And that probably has been high before carnivore, but on carnivore it went much higher. And I thought this was really interesting because my doctor said to me, eat less sugar. And I was like, but I don't eat any sugar. So how can that be? Well, that's because when you're under eating or not eating carbohydrates or fasting, your body continues to try to make its own fuel from your tissues. And so that process of gluconeogenesis runs even if you're in a calorie deficit, and even if you're, eating carbs but not enough, or if you're fasting. And so this in itself, this problem of insulin resistance is going to be huge for people that have been fasting, doing keto, doing carnivore, even intermittent fasting. And so that's where your body is, your bloodstream is having too much fat in it, either the fat you eat or the fat from your tissues, free fatty acids, which are released into the bloodstream in that process of gluconeogenesis. So when you're not eating carbs or you're fasting or whatever, you're putting blood into your bloodstream anyway, just like you're making sugar from your tissues, even if you're not eating it. Your body just is going to do what it wants to do. So you can bypass all of that by just eating more carbohydrates. And I've really learned more recently how powerful not only carbohydrates, but just simply sugar is. And I've been trying to talk more about it, but boy, people get freaked out when you recommend sugar. And I've actually seen this, not just with myself, but I've seen it with people that could not eat anything. And I would recommend actually just sugar, sugar water if you have to. And it works. It's a way to get in glucose, and your body has to have that. And we need all the nutrients, but you cannot go without glucose. And forcing your body to make it is going to be problematic, either in the short term or in the long term. But it will. And so that is the journey that I've been on. And most recently, seeing that my A1C was still high, I'm now increasing the carbohydrates even more and reducing my protein and fat pretty drastically to see where this goes. And so far I love it. I feel great. My sleep has improved even more. I have much better mood. I think people that are, low carbing may not even realize how moody they are, and that if they just had some sugar, they'd probably feel a lot better. So that's what I've been discovering, is actually eating lots and lots of fruit. I'm not afraid to eat my potatoes and rice, and keeping everything else low, especially the fat. And that's really helping to target that insulin resistance that I created myself by under-eating, fasting, and low carbing. So that is the long story for you. If you want more detail on how I did all of this and the nitty-gritty, it's in my books. You can find them on Amazon. The link is below. And also on my website, I have some free guides that you can download that kind of talk about these things in transition and why you would want to use carbohydrates. And you'll see that none of my guides are recommending carnivore diet. Maybe a version of it for some people. Anyway, so I hope that's helpful for you, and I would love to hear about your experience and what you've been through, because I know people go through lots of changes, which is normal, right? Body's gonna change over the years, and your diet might need to change as well. But I would love to hear more about what's happening with you, and I'll address this latest portion more in the very near future with details on that. All right, hope you guys have a great day, and like this video if you enjoyed it, and share it with someone you know. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.